In today's Technique Tuesday, I'm going to be looking at Charlotte's deadlift technique. Now, Charlotte is a very experienced yoga instructor, which will make sense when I dial into the specifics of what we're seeing here, as it's quite a unique scenario. Firstly, however, if we talk about the setup position, in an ideal world, I'd probably like to see Charlotte set up with her shoulders slightly closer to the bar, and the thing that this is going to do this is by keeping the chest up. So at the moment, if we look at the distance between the barbell and Charlotte's shoulders, there's a fair amount of distance, and this is going to increase the distance that the bar has to travel, which will make the lift slightly more inefficient than it needs to be. So I'd like to see Charlotte set up with her chest up ever so slightly, and what that's going to do is that'll drop the hips, and ideally we'd be looking at a slightly different angle between the legs and the hips. That's also going to bring the shoulders closer to the bar, which will, as I said, reduce the distance it's got to travel. Now, interestingly, if we look at Charlotte's starting position in terms of her spine, something Charlotte's told me that she's been working on is almost trying to, let's just redo that a second, is almost trying to get that spine in neutral. As we can see at the moment, you can see it's slightly arched, and in an ideal world with the right cueing and possibly some interventions, we'd have the spine closer to the green line. That said, however, as the bar actually comes off the floor, you'll notice that the spine doesn't change shape too dramatically, which is what we want to see. However, at lockout position, the coaching cue I'd be giving Charlotte is to try and minimize the distance between the chest and the hips. Now, what you'll see if I draw these lines on a little bit more closely, so ideally, we should see a straight line between the hips and the shoulders. Now, what you'll see if I slow-mo this and play it on a little bit further is that Charlotte ends up over-egging this, and what happens, as you can see, is by almost overdoing the movement, we almost get the opposite curvature of the spine. So in the top position, I'd be looking to squeeze the glutes as hard as possible, and I'd also be looking to minimize the distance between the hips and the shoulders by thinking about, imagining there's a piece of string that goes from the chest to the belly button, and trying to shorten that string as best as possible. So by overarching the back, again, what happens if we play this through is that the belly button ends up far in front of the shoulders, and we're also arching through the back. So again, that's probably an easier fix at the top, just simply by a little bit of cueing, and also getting the athlete to imagine that they're being pulled up by a piece of string on their head, but whilst keeping that piece of string down. As Charlotte hinges back here, so if we just zoom this back, you'll notice that she's hinged at her spine rather than hinging at her hips. So if we had a different angle, we'll notice that the hips probably actually haven't moved back as we'd like them to. However, the spine has moved, so maybe even chucking in some hip hinge patterns in the warm-up. So I quite like tempo dumbbell RDLs with the with our bum going towards the wall, because if we don't touch the wall with our bum and we're the right distance away, then this means that we have successfully moved the hips back without rounding the spine. Or I would simply get Charlotte just to practice that improved setup position where the chest is higher and the hips are slightly lower, and simply dropping the bar at the top if needs be. So I hope you found this useful. If you're struggling with any of your technical problems in your squat, bench press or deadlift, or would like me to take a look at your movement, then feel free to get in touch via your preferred channel. And if you're in a position to support my content, then head over to my Patreon site. That's www.patreon.com/ToddDavidsonP2P Coaching.